Everybody's everybody's back. I'll make sure I can see. That'll okay. We'll fire this up again. The other thing I forgot to mention is what if, I think I was getting there, what if I gotta miss a session, or I'm sick, I get the flu, whatever. We are going to tape all the sessions. The district has a YouTube channel. Click to subscribe, or whatever it should say. I will get everybody a link to our YouTube channel, and even before this, we probably got about a half dozen or so. Once this course is done, we'll go back to every month. We do a 2-hour training session on multiple different topics, and we tape them and we upload them to YouTube, or you can just go on and watch them. You are watching a video, typically of me in a PowerPoint, so it's not super exciting, but they're there, and you're welcome to look at and learn from whatever sessions you want, but we will have our classes uploaded there. So if you miss a class, or, I've got to put something together, maybe a quiz, or have you write something up if you miss the session. I have to have some documentation to upload to the state site to say that, yeah, they weren't present, but they met the criteria. So that's kind of how we'll work around that. I've already had a couple people talk to me about January 31. Give me a little bit to kind of think about it and present some ideas next week, because CPR is kind of one of those things that you can't watch a video on. We need to, what's it?
Oh, I was just saying,
okay.
I was just agreeing.
Yeah, we need to, you really got to get hands on, especially if you've never done CPR before. So give me a few days to kind of work with that. Just know that what's nice about doing this is we can be flexible. We're not bound by the technical college system to have to comply with all their requirements. So we can make shifts as we go, which you'll learn working in EMS with patients, that we shift sometimes many directions within 10 minutes as we identify issue, administer treatment. The patient either responds favorably or they respond unfavorably, and we shift to address the next problem. So just something to get used to, that if you're a pretty rigid person, that everything needs to follow in a textbook, there's no patient that follows that for us, unfortunately. But that's okay, that's what makes it fun. So we'll kind of get started on lesson 1, and I'm going to go kind of quick through this. So tomorrow I'm going to build the email list, and I'm going to send everybody a list. One thing I'll send is a copy of that syllabus I put, so you got it. My contact info is there. Don't ever hesitate to contact me at any time. Even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I probably won't answer. But I don't have work hours, so I'm kind of, if I'm alive, I'm available for work. But I'll send you the syllabus. I'll send you a link to our YouTube channel, and I am also going to send you a link to a YouTube video, which I thought about playing tonight, but I think it's probably just, I don't know, the roads weren't great today, so the quicker you get out here, you just sometime during this week watch it. So we're going to talk about some things, that how EMS came to be, and this is a video, the history of EMS, put on by the Journal of Emergency Medicine. It's a magazine, EMS magazine. Probably one of the best videos I've seen put together that really kind of explains things, like when we talk about the white paper and the EMS Systems Act of 1973, and it really puts it into good perspective. And even CPR. Can anyone take a guess on when CPR became an actual thing? What year, roughly? Anyone want to say before 1900? Before 1920? close. It was the 1960s, is when and you know how they figured out mouth-to-mouth works? They actually chemically paralyzed volunteers. Breathe for them for an hour.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and by chemically paralyzing, I don't know if, and you don't have to raise your hand, but if anyone's ever had surgery,
You want to,
number one, right now, if I wanna cut you open, it's gonna hurt. You're probably gonna fight me and my cut's not gonna be clean. So we have to put you to sleep and, we're gonna put you to sleep to the point you don't breathe. So, well, we gotta breathe for you, and we do that with a tube. And if I try to put a breathing tube in you, you'll fight it and gag and bite, so then I gotta paralyze you with medicine, which stops all your muscles from working. And if you don't put them to sleep first and you just paralyze them, you're completely awake, feeling everything, you just can't move, scream, cry, or even blink. But yeah, they had several volunteers from the fire department that, I don't know if they got overtime for it, but chemically paralyzed them for an hour while a nurse did mouth to mouth. And they just measured their oxygen levels and determined, oh, this works, we can sustain life. So a lot of, it's really interesting where we got today from as to where we were. But this video, it's about 50 minutes long, just sometime this week. It's just a good clip. So we'll kind of get started. Obviously, EMS came. People, a lot of times, more often than not, get hurt, sick, injured outside of the hospital. So how do we deliver treatment to a person to sustain them to a higher level of care? And it really started with rudimentary care. You know, even ambulances were kind of first noted in the Civil War, but really came to be during the Napoleonic Wars. Is a lot of what we do pre-hospital today comes from battlefield medicine. So I think through my career, you know, I started in the mid-90s, everything was pretty stagnant, and then the Iraq and Afghanistan conflict happened. And the amount of data, especially for trauma care, just skyrocketed. In fact, when I started, tourniquet was the last resort. That absolutely not, don't ever put a tourniquet on. Whereas today, it's one of the first things we do. If they're bleeding bad, just put a tourniquet on, stop it, and tighten it until it stops. It's not science. Just stop the leak, right? And just because we put a tourniquet on, you're not going to lose your arm or leg. Quite the contrary. You can have a tourniquet on an arm or a leg for 4 or 6 hours. And even here in rural Wisconsin, we should be able to get you to a trauma center within 4 to 6 hours. But people were dying pre-hospital, and what's really thinking that video, they'll show training videos where in the 1950s where rescue squads, in fact, for the most part of modern EMS, where before fire departments, so think 1950s, where do you think most ambulances came out?
Wasn't it the morgue?
Yeah,
The
funeral
funeral
homes. Because they're the ones that had the vehicles designed to transport a body. So really, and even today, there are a few funeral homes that run ambulances, but really before the 1960s, it was funeral homes that came in touch. The local sheriff would call the funeral director, he'd drive over to the station, get the hearse, come over and get you, throw you in the back and drive you as fast as they could to the hospital. And as people heard like neck injuries, you know, we want to keep neck still when someone's hurt. You know, we used to tie bandages and slings around the neck and manipulate the neck. The car, and not we, but so I'm just trying to give you a perspective on, and this video kind of walks you through it. But they started to realize that by delivering care at the site of injury or illness, we can start to improve patient outcomes. Obviously, before EMS system, you didn't start really getting care until you got to the hospital. So how good an ambulance service was based upon how fast the hearse was. What it was probably until I don't know, some of you probably remember, but in the 70s, most ambulances were Cadillacs. And they were designed to go in excess of 120 miles an hour. You basically throw someone in the back on a stretcher and drive as fast as you could to get them to the doctor. Where now we're starting to do more and more treatments in the ambulance. This will probably be on a test, but in 1966, they came out with what was called the white paper. And this was really the first thing that brought attention of EMS to our legislative shareholders. So this was proposed to Congress and to the healthcare system. People are dying, and it was mostly focused on motor vehicle deaths, but people are dying of trauma. And there's a lot of things that we should be doing before they get to the hospital to help save lives. So, and with car accidents then, cars weren't designed to crumple like they are now to absorb that energy. So if you ever are really bored and you Google search a 1960s or 1970s car accident, you'll see two cars on the highway. Maybe just hardly any damage to them at all, but the people are dead. And that's that transfer of energy, right? That cars now today break apart, they blow apart. The vehicle is absorbing the energy rather than the human body. Whereas some of your old school cars, some people love them, but if you hit something, that energy gets transferred to the body. So there's been a lot of things to help improve outcomes. And don't worry too much about things like the white paper. This is like one question, it's a blip, but it's such an important document to where we come today that it's got to get referenced. Some of these slides I just kind of skipped through, but you'll hear, please, it's not important for you. You'll go through this class. This is more of an awareness, so you know what it is. You might see it on a quiz, but then from there, so don't get too hung up on writing down Highway Safety Act, EMS Act. This is just a brief history. So as we started in the 60s, where they said there's a problem, we need to do something about it. The federal government started to come up with more and more ideas to how can we fund it, how can we train it. There was no curriculum. Like what do we teach in EMT or first responder or paramedic? In fact, paramedics didn't even become a thing until about the mid-70s. Anyone remember the TV show that kind of lit it all off?
Emergency.
Who said that? Yeah, he's pretty young. But yeah, Emergency, based in Los Angeles, California. Paramedics driving around in a pickup truck, popping bicarbs and administering care. And that was, even though it was a Hollywood show, it was based on pretty accurate data from what the Los Angeles Fire Department was doing as paramedics. And that show actually forced our Congress and the nation as a role to start to look at EMS as a true specialty. Today even, EMS has advanced immensely, but we still don't have a federal agency that oversees EMS. We still sit essentially within a closet of Department of Transportation. So we don't have, the fire service has the NFPA. Law enforcement has, their Homeland Security, the FBI, but EMS doesn't have a national agency. So EMS, if I show you one EMS system, you've seen exactly one EMS system. So every EMS agency works a little bit differently. In fact, those with local knowledge, just think about here in Vilas County. Did Winchester and Boulder do the exact same treatment protocol, guidelines, response?
Supposed to.
Supposed to, but do they?
Exactly.
Does Lac Flambeau and Oneida County EMS operate exactly the same? No. So everybody has a little bit twist, and sometimes it's good. We should make adjustments here for our community. We're not in the knife and gun club here. Milwaukee, they see more of that. They don't see a lot of femur fractures and UTV accidents, with snowmobile accidents. We see that here. I came from central Wisconsin, right in the middle. I could count on one hand in 27 years how many snowmobile accidents I had. One hand. I think I saw more snowmobile accidents just last year working here than I did at a full-time fire. In snowmobile accidents, it's a little unique approach, as opposed to a lot of the other incidents that we see. 1970s, federal government kind of started to say, hey, we should probably start funding states to develop systems. So right now, EMS is really kind of overseen by the states. And in Wisconsin, we are under the DHS, Department of Health Services. We are dictated by what's called Administrative Rule, or DHS 110. If you're really bored, you can Google it and read it. It's a difficult document, and that administrative rule is overseen by what's called Wisconsin Statute 256. And Wisconsin Statute 256 is what oversees the generality of EMS systems in the state. And then 110 is our administrative rule that tells you how you get licensed, how you gotta get trained, what an ambulance service has to do in order to operate. Now, I don't expect you guys to read 110 or 256 or and they've been kind of refining. You know, in 1996, they came out with a document, Agenda for the Future. I think it was 20 items, everything from education, quality improvement, quality assurance, that they touched on, said if we want to build EMS, these are things we have to address. Today, we still haven't addressed half of them. So you can see EMS is kind of fractured, and we got a lot of work to do on a federal, national level to get there. I don't know if they've come out with EMS Agenda 2050 yet. It seems like they keep coming out with papers saying, hey, this is a good idea. We don't have funding for it. But these are things we want you to do. And they're real, we'll get kind of around the tenets of what they're trying to get to with it. One thing that we have, Wisconsin has done, is they've moved to what's called the National Core Competency Model. I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but there are right now, I think there still might be a couple outliers, but there's essentially 4 certification levels that are recognized on a national level. EMR, the Emergency Medical Responder, which is what we're doing. Then Emergency Medical Technician, and then Advanced Emergency Medical Technician, and then Paramedic. So those are the 4 nationally recognized levels. Wisconsin has a couple, I think they phased it out, but it used to be called the EMT Basic ID Tech, and then the EMT Intermediate, or the I-99. So we have these other little, where Wisconsin took parts of curriculums and kind of made their own level. But Wisconsin is now moving or shifting towards everything is fitting within that national model. Has anyone ever heard of the National Registry? Okay. Just a little bit about that, we'll touch on this again next week. That National Registry is a national organization that kind of sets the standard for educational requirements to be at a certain license level. For EMT level on up, you have to take the National Registry exam to become licensed. So you want to become an EMT, you have to take a class, pass the class, then you have to pass the National Registry exam. For EMR level in Wisconsin, you do not need to take the National Registry exam. You can, and we will work to make that available if anybody wants to. It's basically just an online, you have to sit at a computer, pay some money, take a test, get your National Registry. But that's not required. But as we get towards the end, we'll kind of talk, and those that want to do it. That registry card allows for reciprocity between states. So if you say, I'm gonna go move to Nebraska, you can take that National Registry card, go to the Nebraska EMS office, and they will accept it and give you a license. It means everyone's kind of meeting that national standard. And we'll kind of break down those details much later, but it's not, I just wanted to calm everyone, the National Registry test is not a requirement. Has anyone ever heard how good the National Registry exam is? Renee, would you like to speak on it?
It's interesting.
We're not going to give you the right answer. We want you to pick the best answer.
Right.
It kind of sums it up. So, you know, like, what do you do first to someone who's not breathing? Open the airway, check to see if they're breathing, or put your gloves on. Well, they want you to put your gloves. You know, it's just kind of stupid things like that.
That's my answer. Close.
So EMS system as a whole, and when we talk the system, we're not just talking Winchester, Vilas County, we're talking on a national level. The system is just an overall umbrella that every, from first responder, agency in rural New Mexico to, high urban paramedic, ambulance services, they're all within the emergency medical service system. And these are standards that are kind of set nationally that we address not only in training, but we need to address at the service level. And a lot of it seems pretty self-explanatory, but regulation and policy and resource management, and even into human resources and training, a lot of these areas have been thrown on the state. So these areas, as far as regulation that within the EMS system, the state of Wisconsin DHS sets it. For example, in the state of Wisconsin, in order to transport a patient in an ambulance, you have to have, at minimum, 2 licensed emergency medical technicians. Well, one can be driving, one can be in the back, 2 can be in the back. You can have 3, 4, it doesn't matter, but minimum, you need 2. Now, the state then puts exceptions. And this came several years ago where now Wisconsin would recognize if you're an ambulance service, I believe, and quote, help me if I'm wrong, but if you serve a population under 10,000, that an EMR can account as an ambulance crew. But you may have to be driving if there's only 2 of you. The higher level needs to be in the patient compartment or the back of the ambulance. But that's just an example of a state regulation policy. Transportation, our ambulances are currently still under Department of Transportation. Actually, the State Patrol is the ones who tell us what equipment we can and should have in an ambulance. We have to follow what's called Trans 309. Obviously, you guys aren't working in an ambulance yet, but it's just to kind of show you the fragment that the Wisconsin State Patrol, Highway Patrol, law enforcement tells us what equipment we should have on a paramedic level ambulance. It's that way, and the state EMS board is still debating that. They have been for the last 8 years. So things move at a very slow pace. What does move faster is the clinical component, is how we're treating people, how we're managing people. In fact, there's probably some things in there in your textbook when we talk about cardiac arrest, shock, and resuscitation that are already outdated. They're outdated before those books even hit the printers. So the good news is they don't, the tests are more general. They're not, so you're not going to read long information in here like the other tests. Okay? So I just want to kind of calm that fear. Facilities that they're starting to get better at defining different levels and what certain centers are. And when we talk about facilities, we're specifically talking about hospitals. Communications, everything from public, 911. 911, that coming out, that kind of came out of the whole EMS thing. So the fact that we developed one universal 3-digit emergency number that's used throughout the nation to identify. So prior to that, and I think that came out in the 80s, prior to that, you would have to call your local 7-digit fire department number and hope somebody answered the phone to come get you. Medical direction. So as an EMR, actually any license level, to carry an active license, you have to be overseen by what's called medical direction. A medical director in the state of Wisconsin must be a physician, an MD or a DO that oversees your system. So each agency, so like the Flambeau Fire and EMS, you have a medical director. You have one doctor who oversees and approves everything. Northwoods EMS District has a doctor that oversees and approves everything we do. That medical director also has to sign off on your license. So when you do your application for your license, the medical director has to approve it. which, and we're gonna get into the whole licensing thing, it's a lot easier than what you think. Trauma systems, each state must have a trauma, designated trauma system, and then within the state, there's several regions. So Wisconsin has the State Trauma Advisory Council, or STAC, and we're within the North Central region, the NCRTAC, which holds conferences every year, educational opportunities every year, and if you guys get through this, that stuff's all free, you can get into and just continue to build your knowledge. Some of this is regarding the EMT stuff, so I'll skip over it. Just some other terms. So 911, you're gonna see the term PSAP. That stands for Public Safety Answering Point. So whenever we talk about that, when you hear the terms PSAP, they're referring to your communication center. Here, it's Vilas County Dispatch, which, help me out, is that run through the Sheriff's Department, or are they independent?
Through the sheriff's department.
Through the Sheriff's Department. So here's the thing with fire and EMS folks, please know that with the communication center, we are and we always will be secondary to law enforcement needs. So if you have a working fire or a multi-casualty patient and we're needing resources or things from dispatch, and they have a deputy who's running a license plate, the license plate check will get priority because they are a part of the law enforcement organization. Just a sad fact, but just get used to it. Cell phones, you know, they enhance, does anyone know, does Vilas have enhanced 911? I think they do, because they're pretty good at pinpointing. So, they're continuing to build on dispatch systems. The one, I got asked this question by a citizen who said, if we can text but we can't call, can we text 911?
Good question.
I don't have an answer.
I'm gonna try.
There's new versions of some enhanced version 2 911s that can text, you can send video, they can relay that video directly to the responders. I can tell you we will not see that here during my career, probably. You know, even the county I come from is pretty beefed up, a lot busier system, they're not even close to getting it there. So I'm just happy if I can call on the radio and someone can hear me. That's a bonus right now. But our,
My phone allows emergencies, so like, even there's spots at my house, if I'm not hitting the booster, I'll get the Ghostbuster symbol, and it'll say emergency calls only.
Yes.
So my phone will, but I don't think they'll be able to ping it,
so in
but I can.
the cell carriers were required by the federal government to put features in to allow that even though you were showing no towers or the big zero with the line through it, that they will pick up whatever signal is there to allow you to make a 911 call. So that was kind of done, which that's what tells me that when I can't make phone calls and my cell carrier is like, oh, there's nothing we can do. It's like, yeah, there's something you can do, you just don't want it. But we had that ice rescue on last week, and they were able to ping within, I think, a couple feet of where that guy was.
That's very close.
Yeah. Yeah, and if that would have been me, you guys would probably be at my funeral right now. So. Okay. FCC oversees that. We're gonna. Hey guys, I'm just kind of skipping over some stuff because it's just not pertinent to the EMR level. Let's talk about the types of systems that we see. So there's a lot of different systems that you'll run into, and there's some similarities and there's some differences. So within the United States, probably fire department EMS is the predominant 911 delivery for ambulance service. Fire systems, you know, there's good things about it, there's bad things about it. That's where I was for 27 years. The good thing is fire stations are typically geographically, strategically located in a community. They're generally staffed, provide quick access. People have always seen the fire service as, when I have an emergency, I don't know who to call, I call the fire department. Some bad things about the fire service is fire department EMS, a lot of departments have firefighters, very good firefighters, that do EMS because they have to and they don't want to. So that can be kind of a bad thing, right? And like where we were at, well, kind of like Rhinelander, it's a small full-time department where when I was there, we had 10 people on shift. And we had to know every discipline, from engine company, ladder company, rescue, paramedicine, tactical medicine, critical care transport, all these different disciplines. So to try to keep you equally trained is very difficult versus just an EMS system where that's all they do. They're allowed more time and training for just that purpose. Municipal EMS is where a city provides, city, township, some type of government entity provides EMS. That's pretty much what everybody here is. So, you know, before the district, the town of Winchester provided EMS to the towns through their fire department. In fact, in statute, right now, there's only one municipal entity that is required by statute to provide EMS, and that is a township. A city, a village, there's nothing in statute that says they need to provide EMS. Why is that? That was an error when they wrote that statute 50 years ago. But as of today, townships are held by statutory language. They must provide EMS. Now, it doesn't mean that town has to. They can contract, have someone else do it. But they have ensured the burden financially, logistically, to provide EMS. That's in statute. Northwoods EMS District, we're kind of an odd thing that this book hasn't been, we're writing the book as we go. But that's another, where we'd be considered like a municipal entity. Private EMS, we don't have it so much here, but if anyone's ever been around Milwaukee, Madison, and you see like Ryan Brothers or Bell Ambulance, those are private for-profit EMS systems. Good providers, but again, their system is built upon making money. They're a business. Doesn't mean they don't provide any lesser care, but you see private industry, they focus on that niche of, you know, Beverly's got to get to her dialysis appointment tomorrow, so go pick her up, take her to the appointment, take her home. They do some 911 and they do a lot of hospital to hospital, but you know, they gear their business to, and some of them do 911 as well. But their model is to make money for the shareholders. Hospital-based EMS, technically kind of quasi, that's what you got with Oneida County. You know, it's owned by the county, but the staff is a hospital-based system. So outside of Oneida County, like your Medevac that you see, that's a hospital-based. And Medevac provides 911 in some areas, otherwise some areas they're strictly solely inter-facility transport. Law enforcement EMS, I don't know much of that.
I mean, Ashwaubenon has.
Well, Ashwaubenon's public safety.
Yeah, public safety was a little different, but.
So public safety is a real unique animal, and that's where, like Ashwaubenon, and technically Lambeau Field is Ashwaubenon. If you're working there, you're a police officer, you're a firefighter, and you're a paramedic. You do all three. How they do it, I don't know. No, yeah, so you're doing speeding tickets in the ambulance. Just to give you a perspective of the different type of systems out there. I had touched on this a little bit, but the different levels, these are the ones that I'll focus on when we talk about scope of practice. Next week, we're gonna put up the Wisconsin scope of practice, and I'll send it to you, and that lists every skill, every medication, which each level can do. EMR is 108-hour curriculum. I think EMT has moved up to like 240, just under 250 hours. I think AEMT, how?
I think it's up there. I thought it was like 130 something.
In addition to EMT.
Well, yeah.
So, and EMT is like the prerequisite. So if you wanna, you can't just sign up to take an advanced EMT or paramedic class. You have to be an EMT basic first. That is the foundation. It's kind of the prerequisite. Paramedic, is that about 1,500 hours?
So I think we're a little higher in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so it, I mean, it goes up, and when you start with the EMT curriculum, there's what's called a clinical component. So in addition to class, you have to go to a hospital to do ride time and actually, like, be with the patient. Or EMR, we don't have to do that. Refreshers, so once you get licensed, you have to complete a refresher to maintain that license. So there's two things. There's the National Registry certification, and if you choose to do that and keep that card, that's good for 2 years. If you don't do National Registry and just do your state license, that's good for 3 years. But they're both the same amount of education time required. So for the EMR level, for National Registry, you need to maintain 16 hours of continuing education every 2 or 3 years. For the EMT, it jumps to 40. For the advanced, it jumps to 50. And to the paramedic, it jumps to 60. And so it's kind of like with the first responder or EMR. If I can find time to do 8 hours of continuing education every year, you're fine. So the educational requirement for an EMR, not intense. And even EMT, not intense. And there's traditional courses that you can take where I go to a class for 6 weeks, get all my hours, and I'm done. Or like what we do here, you come here, I track and record your hours, and then we just continue to build it up, and we do it continually. So that come the end of licensing cycle, it's all done. We don't have to do this big batch at once. And for you guys, like the Flammel that's not in the district, when we go back to doing them, I've already told Kirby and everyone over there that you guys are more than welcome to track your hours and record it. I know, some of this is kind of boring stuff. And please, if I'm saying things that aren't making sense, I'm teaching like you guys have no idea anything about the EMS system at all. You'll see reference, so the healthcare system, the EMS system is within the healthcare umbrella. So healthcare umbrella, a lot of people think hospitals, but us in the pre-hospital or out-of-hospital arena are within the EMS system that's under that whole healthcare. So we are part of that link of when time zero of someone getting sick or hurt that needs medical care. It starts with EMS, goes to an emergency department, that can go to inpatient surgery, all the way through to discharge. So from the time you are sick and injured to the time you go back home and are back to healthy again, anything in between there is within the healthcare system. Within Wisconsin, every hospital has a classification, and it's classified 1 through 4, and then critical access. So I'll kind of start with level 1 is the highest level hospital you can be, and this is kind of based a little bit on trauma resuscitation. I think our closest level 1 is Duluth. Is Duluth level 1?
Green Bay.
I know Wisconsin, we just have medicine. And UW.
Maybe Minneapolis.
So Duluth is definitely one, yeah.
Duluth is a 1, Minneapolis is a 1, UW is a 1, down in Madison and Milwaukee is a. So level 1, highest level of trauma and care that you can get. Level 2 is the next level, and our closest level 2 here is Wausau. So what's the difference between level 2 and level 1? There's no difference for patient treatment. So if you are a really bad trauma patient, a level 1 facility and a level 2 facility can do the exact same stuff treatment-wise. So actually, every treatment that you would get at UW-Madison, they can technically do at Spires for trauma. But level 1 facilities have a research component to it. So you're going to see your level 1 facilities typically in college towns like Madison, Milwaukee, things like that. There are things that Aspirus can't handle that they do ship to a level 1, some super specialty stuff, but really our Wausau Hospital as a level 2 can really manage some pretty high acuity patients. Marshfield proper is also a level 2, but they're also a pediatric level 2. They're our closest place to send critical kids. Level 3 is kind of this is your standard community hospital, and like when I was in Wisconsin Rapids, that was a level 3. Minocqua, Woodruff, and Ironwood, they're classified as level 4. So they're really, they have some surgical capability. They usually have to call a surgeon in, but otherwise they're pretty much stabilized and get out of here to a higher facility. And then we've got specialty centers. So burn centers, I think Minneapolis is probably our closest, maybe Duluth. OB is a little bit of a difficulty here. I think Ironwood just closed OB services, right? Howard Young doesn't have OB. Marshfield has OB sometimes. Otherwise, closest OB, I think, for us is Rhinelander. So you can see there's the pediatric centers, we talked about that. We really don't have a poison center anywhere that I'm worried. Stroke centers, I think Howard Young and Marshfield Medical Center, Minocqua, are both some primary stroke centers. Cardiac center, that's probably going to be your level 2. Hyperbaric centers. Where we see hyperbaric therapy is with carbon monoxide poisoning. And we'll get to that in class, but once we hit a certain threshold or percentage of carbon monoxide, we have to get you to these specialty facilities because they can't do anything here. I know I talk a lot about transport and ambulance, but it's kind of important for the EMR to have an understanding of what's going on because you may be accounted someday as part of an ambulance crew up here. For the most part, none of the services here are really driving to a specialty center. We don't have the resource, we don't have the logistical support. We're out of our area too much as is, just going to Minocqua. It's probably a 2-hour turnaround from the time the 911 call until the crew is back, sometimes 3 hours. We can't afford to leave the area for 6 to 8 hours. We utilize helicopter EMS up here. So our job is to recognize that they need that specialty treatment, to realize that we can't get them there by ground, and to activate that helicopter system that can. Just as a trauma bay, all emergency rooms are going to have what's called a trauma bay. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a trauma as in bleeding or hurt. This can be a cardiac arrest, someone who's difficulty breathing that's just about to stop breathing. Any super high acuity patients will have what's called a trauma room. And this is kind of what it looks like when we come rolling in, when we get a radio report that we have a critical patient, that there can be anywhere between 3, 4, up to, you get to like Marshfield Hospital, you've got 15 people waiting, all in gowns, waiting for you to move them onto the bed and start treating the patient. Of course, we work closely, so we're going to talk about interactions with, up here we're working with fire departments. A lot of our firefighters don't have EMS training. They might have some first aid, CPR, but we also don't have training in as just EMS putting out fires or specialized rescue. Even for our district up here, almost all of my staff has fire certifications and background. But as an EMS district, we don't have the equipment to get people. So if someone's out on the ice, I'm going to look at the fire department and go, you're in the ambulance, just go get them. Bring them. Law enforcement, working with law enforcement, and one thing we've really been lucky up here, I've been very impressed with the Vilas County Sheriff's Department that we work with. They can be a huge asset. First responders, EMTs, work along with paramedics. That's kind of our makeup in the district. So our staffing model is minimum 1 EMT with a paramedic partner. We're fortunate that we are shifting to an 8 EMT paramedic partner. It just brings a whole nother level of scope. But it's good in that the 8 EMTs can kind of learn some of the pathophysiology from the paramedics. And the paramedics have that foundational sounding board to say, hey, maybe stop playing doctor and let's do the foundation stuff that's really going to save their life. So it's kind of that really good balance to patient care, which I'm guilty of. Has anyone ever heard of someone getting paramedic to death? Yeah, you know, because sometimes the best treatment is no treatment. All right, so, and this is not only EMT, but EMR responsibility. So maintaining readiness, at some point, whether on department or even when you finish this class, I would assume that everyone's probably gonna have some type of go bag kit, some level of equipment. So you gotta look at it once in a while. It's the medical field, so everything has an expiration date on it. Make sure your equipment's ready to rock. That there's nothing worse than you having like a defibrillator and you go to put it on a patient and your battery died 6 months ago. So we gotta make sure that the equipment's ready. Our crews do equipment checks at the start of every shift. Safety. We are gonna talk about safety a lot. That here's the thing, when we are rolling out on calls, everything pre-hospital is an austere environment. It's unpredictable. There's so many things that can go wrong. And our first and foremost concern is safety for ourselves. And we address that with personal protective equipment. We make sure we have stuff to protect us from contracting disease. We train you to recognize hazards, some obvious hazards. So if smoke's coming out of something, it's probably on fire. It's a fire hazard, we need a fire department. To even psychological hazards. So patients can sometimes have behavioral emergencies. They can have weapons, and we have a potential to get hurt. So we have to be able to recognize that and to get the things in place to either fix that threat or just get the hell out of it. We'll talk in a couple of weeks like medical legal stuff. So yeah, when you're a licensed EMS provider, you now fall within some legal requirements that we have to comply with. And one of them is patient abandonment. That when we start care on somebody, we can't just leave them. Unless. So if I'm doing CPR on someone, and someone comes around the corner with a gun in their hand, see it, I'm leaving. And that patient's staying right there. And that's not abandonment. That we do have those protections. That the scene becomes unsafe. You just get out of there, let law enforcement do what law enforcement does. Operating emergency vehicle, we'll do some of that in this class, get you guys out, and maybe with, we'll find one of the departments to give me permission to let you play, but you know, an ambulance handles a lot differently than your Explorer or whatever they are. They're kind of bigger pieces of equipment. What's that?
And you got humans in the back.
Yeah, you got humans in the back. You know, assessment, providing care. How do we lift and move people safely? I'm going to tell you right now that generally, the heavier people are, the less healthy they are. And the less healthy they are, is the higher the likelihood that they'll need EMS. I don't know, what's your heaviest, Jim?
I think 620s,
Okay.
620s.
I broke 4 digits. I had a 1,012-pound patient once. Years ago in Wisconsin Rapids. Yeah. Now, to let you, this wasn't someone, they had a legitimate thyroid disorder, but that was the largest human being I've ever. Listen, before power, they had the old fold-out H-frame. That was 7 firefighters, about 4.5 hours, 3 trips to the hardware store, and basically just on plywood to move into the ambulance. But yeah, and you guys probably aren't going to be seeing that heavy, but you know, 300-400 pounds, and they're on the floor, and sometimes that's the hardest part of our job is how do we get them from there to our ambulance, and we got to figure that out. So we have to live safely, and that's why I have it actually listed. It's actually a unit that we go over. There's a lot of tricks and tips of the trade that we can safely move somebody to not hurt them anymore, but also to protect us.
And they're never laying out in the middle of the floor easy to get to.
In fact, when you go home, and whenever I go to a restaurant, this is just habit, you go to the bathroom, and there's what we call the EMS real estate, and that's between the toilet and the wall. And you would be surprised the size of people that can fit in that little space. And then trying to get them out. You know, written and oral report, so here's one good thing, is that we'll talk about, there is patient care documentation that's required when you are on service responding to calls. We have to do some documentation. The good news is for the EMR non-transport level, that documentation is pretty light and small, and a lot of that burden will fall on the facility. So if you're not gonna be with a agency or service, then you don't have to worry about documentation. But if you're with an agency or service, we'll go through what's called the wards reporting stuff. Be able to safely move, transfer a patient to hospital care, preserve and keep data collection, and advocate for the patient. Now, we not only advocate for their clinical need, their psychological need, but patient privacy. And I'll talk a lot about this in the medical legal section. We will see things that the general public probably shouldn't see. We have access to protected health information. So what we do, what we see on the scene with the patient, you know, that needs to stay between those who need to be involved. And that's your other crew members, ambulance crews, and hospital crews. If you want to lose your license really quick and then face, at minimum, civil action, potentially criminal, go out public and talk about what you've seen on an emergency call. That's stuff that's got to stay in-house. Now, I will use a lot of case studies throughout the class to maybe correlate what we're teaching with real life example, but I'm not telling you it was Joe Smith from this address. You know, we're talking about patients that I've seen. You know, that's okay to do that, but a lot of people have gotten in trouble of going to a call and saying, yeah, I was at that car accident on 51 Town Line. Boy, let me tell you, that gets you in trouble. And social media, photos, we don't do that stuff. I mean, that's minimum civil, very expensive civil action will be taken. Americans with Disability Act, obviously we have to be aware of that, and there's things, I'll just use as an example, Americans with Disabilities Act and service dogs. So service dogs, not therapy dogs, but service dogs. We are required by the ADA that we have to accommodate to take that animal with us to the hospital. And the hospital is required by law to accommodate that animal when we come to the hospital. And there's two questions we can ask, and if we ask anything else besides those two questions, we could, again, face civil action. Not to put fear in you, but I'm just trying to correlate as an example. Within the world of EMS is that there's a lot of accommodations, and there's people who fit within the ADA that can certainly become licensed professionals. However, I will tell you that there are some physical limitations to this line of work. We have to be able to safely move people. We have to be able to operate some equipment and work in and around an ambulance. So there's some standards, and a lot of those are department specific, but I just need to get that out right now. A lot of ET stuff. Accidents can be a lot of hazard. And honestly, anyone want to take a guess what the biggest hazard at a motor vehicle accident is?
Other cars.
Bingo. That's if you looked up causes of death among firefighters or emergency vehicle accidents, probably right up there. And let's take out heart disease, heart attacks, cancer, which cancer still hogs the fire service and that. So Tad, how many of you are firefighters, if I can ask? All right, how many of you wash your gear? Hey, I was, want to be that salty firefighter with the black helmet and everything. But that gear, the carcinogens that are in that turnout gear, doesn't seem like an issue when you're in your 20s or 30s, but I tell you, I'm hitting 50 and my body is feeling the effects of almost 30 years in the fire service. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago when the big push for keeping your gear clean. And it wasn't until I had a close call on a structure fire when we had to have a crew almost had to activate Rick to come get us. And it was then I got thinking that, the reflective things on our helmet, and I like it when they're black because it made me feel cool, like I've been a firefighter. And that stuff is stained with black smoke, you can't see it. It doesn't work when you have a flashlight. And it was that day I came back, and ever since then, squeaky clean, shiny, because, well, I want to be found. I can't remember where I was going with that, but, yeah, so a lot of this won't be, and again, I'm trying to take an EMT curriculum and give you what you need for EMR, but let's talk about some of these characteristics real quick. Integrity. Integrity, a lot of people have different definitions. I really look at it as, integrity is a huge trait of professionalism, and professionalism isn't linked to if you get a paycheck. I mean, I've always been a large advocate for the EMS system, for first responder through paramedic, and it's hard to advocate to get that funding and that federal recognition and support to continue to build this if we're not professional. And all these other things tie into that, but in integrity, I always use it as, do what you say even when no one is watching. So to maintain that attribute, to always look to yourself, to self-motivate that this line of work, this is the start of lifelong education. Things change. The way I was taught to manage a cardiac arrest victim in 1994 is night and day difference from what we do today. And knowing what I know now, I look back and thinking, how many people could we have maybe made a better difference? Because we were doing it wrong. And we were taught off the best science they had at that time. So EMS is constantly evolving, constantly changing, which is why we have to do refreshers. We have to stay current on clinical trends. Empathy. We are going to see people at their worst. So when you go out as an EMS provider, we are a stranger being invited into someone's home at probably the worst minute, hour of their life. If you think about your home, and I just want you to kind of reflect on this. If you're having a guest over that's never been to your house, what do you typically do the day of? Clean it? What do you think they do when someone all of a sudden collapses and isn't responding? And they call 911. That's obviously the last of the words, but we should be honored that we are respected and trusted enough to come into somebody's home, to ask them personal questions about their medical history. You'll hear me when I'm talking to people, when's the last time you peed? What did it look like? What did it smell like? Did you poop today? What did it look like? What did it smell like? These are personal questions. When I have a female with abdominal pain, when was your last menstrual cycle? Was it normal flow? Was it different? These are all questions I need to ask. So, humility, the human body, we'll have fun and, in class here, but when it comes down to it, every human has the same function. Some of them are cool, some of them aren't cool. But a lot of the questions and things we ask, can you imagine if I saw you at Walmart, came up to you and said, hey, did you poop today? Kind of weird, right? Well, we're doing that on every time. So we're being trusted with that empathy of understanding that person in this situation, that's out of their control. That it's got to the point they can't fix what's going on. We're coming in to try to offer some support and help get it better. But please know, and here's one thing that someone that took me about 10 years into my career, that no matter what happened, when we walk in that door, that's not our fault. Okay? We're coming in after it happened, trying to do what we can, the best to fix it. And I say that because you will see, as you go out, you will see people die. It's not pleasant, but we will see it. But on the other side, we're gonna see a lot of really beautiful things too. We're gonna see people who hurt and almost dead, or they were dead, and we see them a month later, that they were discharged from the hospital because of the actions that you did to get them. So there's good and there's some bad. I just kind of want you to mentally prepare you for that now. Professional appearance and hygiene, this is kind of something, this is why, we have uniforms. Well, if I came in your house, and please don't judge me right now, it's been a long day, and I've grown my beard, I hadn't shaved for 27 years, so took this job up here. Sorry, Chief, but
It's all right.
I'll run a pump until spring. If I walked in your house with, my shirt on, coffee stains on it, I smelt like, yesterday's garbage, are you gonna have a lot of confidence in my ability to render patient care? No, so appearance. Now, the one caveat, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're an EMR in your community, and your neighbor across the road collapsed and is unconscious, yeah, throw some shorts on and flip-flops and get over there and start rendering care. Self-confidence, that's what this course is for. So I know tonight is just kind of super generic, but what we are gonna do here, compared to end of April, is that if you think about, if you've ever been at a scene, a car accident, someone, bone sticking through the skin on a wingman trail, and you're scared, like, I don't know what to do, I feel worthless, that when we finish this, you're just gonna have that much more confidence. I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not gonna come out of this class that I can fix every problem. Okay, that's not gonna happen. It doesn't happen for me yet. I've been doing this. This is what I do for a living. But you're gonna be that much more confident to step in and provide the best possible care for that patient.
You got a little bit left, but
Okay.
I know I'm where you're at, but at the 1 hour mark.
All right. Well, you guys just want me to kind of go about another 10, 15 minutes and cut you out?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that. But verbal communication skills, we really don't do this job in a vacuum. As an EMR, there's gonna be times it's John Wayne time, that you are the first one in the house, and you're the only one there for the first 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Boulder Junction, I'm gonna use you for an example. Okay, Boulder crew gets paged out on an ambulance. They go over to Oswego Fish Track Road.
All the time.
So our crew's over there for someone who fell and their hip was. 10 minutes later, Lakewood Market, 50-year-old male collapsed out by the gas pumps, unsure if he's breathing. Where's your ambulance? It's on mission.
Next door.
Where's the next one coming from? Here. How long does it take to get from here to Lakewood? 20 minutes. So, guess what we need?
That's good roads.
We need those EMRs on scene providing that immediate life-saving care. So you could be there for 15, 20 minutes. All right? Hopefully, more people are coming to support you, but that's the world of the EMR. And just to let you know, I do appreciate EMRs. Before I came up here, I was in EMR for my little township where I live, where the ambulance is probably 15-minute drive away. So there were a lot of times I was the only one on a cardiac arrest with my little AED and bag valve, asking the patient's wife to help me get his clothes off, put the stickers on so I could jog. So you may be working alone for a bit, but when people come in, when an ambulance shows up, you are now integrating with people outside of your immediate circle, and now you're in your little bit bigger circle. So those communication skills, teamwork, respect, all that, all those attributes come into play. And I know this is some pretty self-explanatory stuff, but it's still important that we cover it in this foundation here. I kind of touched a little bit on this, you know, the physical demands. And again, I don't expect everyone to be here to be a CrossFit nut, power lifter. That's not what's needed. Teamwork, but what we need to know is, I can't do that by myself, so I'm either gonna wait for help or call for help. I've had to tell patients, hey, bud, I wanna get you up. I know you're really uncomfortable, but you're 426 pounds. I ain't deadlifting that today. So we're gonna stay here with you until we get more help. But recognizing that, for physical demand, maintenance of licensure certification, we talked about that. It's just knowing that we're gonna have ongoing refresher hours, that it doesn't stop, but it's not that much. And when you take 16 hours and spread that out over 2 years or 3 years, depending on which route we go, it's really not much. And so long as we will, at least 2 hours a month, you get here for free. And I talked a lot about the state of Wisconsin and their role. We're going to talk a lot through the course about medical direction. So everyone understands that a physician kind of oversees our operations. Now, every agency, be it an ambulance service, first responder or non-transport first responder agency, they have to develop what's called an operational plan. So Lacta Flambeau, you guys are, that's done, Winchester, it's done, right, for the most part. And that operational plan within it defines different components of the system that we had talked about previously. What are you doing for communications? What are you doing for training? How do you check licensure, right? That's all in that operational plan. Your medical director, the doctor that you chose to oversee your agency, looks at that operational plan, approves it, and provides support. Now, he or she maybe not be readily available 24/7, but with EMS, our primary medical direction is whoever the emergency room physician is at either Marshfield or Howard. So there are times that in the ambulance that we have questions or we need to collaborate with, so we will call them on the phone or radio, say, hey doc, we got this, we're thinking this, we're doing this, this is what the patient's doing. And that's kind of what we define as your online medical direction. Most of our clinical treatment, probably 99.9% of it, is what we consider through offline medical direction. Has anyone ever heard of the term protocol? So a protocol, and I'll just use an example, we have a protocol for chest pain patients. And it says A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, and O, P. That we do these steps, make sure they're breathing, make sure they got oxygen, make sure they check. That we work down through this protocol. Those protocols are reviewed by that physician that says, I give the blessing, here's your offline medical control, so that we can work independently. We don't have to ask a doctor for permission to do everything that we do. Some systems are a little more stringent, like I'm not familiar with Lacta Flambeau. Your medical director may say, hey, you guys can do all of this, but when you get to here, you gotta call me first. So each medical director is a little bit different. We're fortunate here in our district that our medical director just says, do what you gotta do, if you got questions, call us. So that's kind of the difference between different oversight and medical direction that we run into. And of course, that's with the protocols. Quality improvement and quality assurance, I'll just kind of touch on that a little bit. You'll hear me talk about QA, CQI, QA, QI. So this is with every EMS system. Kind of the big difference is QA stands for quality assurance. That's meaning we have a system in place to assure that what they do in the ambulance is of quality. It's meeting a certain standard. QI, quality improvement, that's saying, okay, this is what we're doing, how can we make that better? And then CQI is continuous quality improvement. That's where it's, and that's what we do here, continuous quality assurance and quality improvement. So I'm still waiting on fourth quarter reports, which I'll send out to the crew. But we have certain metrics at the district. For example, chest pain patients. We expect to maintain quality that if someone's having chest pain, within 8 minutes of us walking in that door, we have a 12-lead ECG. The 12-lead ECG, that's the stickers we put on. We look at your heart and we can look to see if you're having a heart attack or not. 8 minutes from the time we walk in the door. Heart attacks are time sensitive, that's why we use that measure. So that's a quality assurance. And then we look at our chest pain calls over the course of a year or by quarter, and we say, we're at 12 minutes. So then we go to the crews and say, why is it taking 12 minutes? And what can we do to improve? And the crews might say, well, Jason, we get the cardiac monitor in and then we gotta open up the stickers and put them on and then patch them. And we say, well, why don't we just pre-attach the stickers on the wires? If that can shave a minute off, I'm using an example, I'm leading into what we're going to be doing, putting the stickers on the wheels.
Half the battle is actually getting, you guys are gonna learn this, but, all the significant others or other people call for someone to get them to go. And that's one thing up here is like, hey, can we do this for you? Can we do this for you? People get old and stubborn, we're all stubborn. That's a hard, like, hey, can we do this for you? Can we do this for you?
That is one thing that I've noticed at least up in here. I don't know
Here,
if you
yeah,
guys
this
see it down
is
by me,
crazy.
That we get called and they're like, I don't, I'm fine. Dude,
Your arm is this shaped. Can I do that? No, I really don't want. No, can I really can help you. No, I'm good.
Can we give you some pain meds? No, I'm fine. Please, can you give us some pain meds? Well, what are you gonna give me? Fentanyl? Oh, I don't know. Fentanyl,
It is up here, it's crazy.
fentanyl that we give in the ambulance is not the fentanyl that, it's fentanyl, but it's different. So that's kind of your QA, CQI in a nutshell. I even do that in the class. So as we go forward, we're doing skill testing and stations. We're looking at, are we as a class progressing in that skill and knowledge the way we should? And if we're not, then I look back at myself, all right, how can I deliver this better to get more bang for the buck? So that's kind of, when you hear the terms QA, CQI, that's what we're kind of talking about. Patient safety, this is something we address too, obviously advocating for the patient, but it goes beyond something simple as, when we put someone on a cot, gotta put seatbelts on. And we're even supposed to have, by rule, they have to have shoulder straps on them as well. And I can tell you how many,
All the
we weren't really,
Every time.
we weren't the best with it, and actually, the more critical the patient, the less, yeah. Even the gentleman that we had that was exposed in the water for almost an hour, we probably got a mile down the road, and I could feel the ambulance on the ice, and I should get some seatbelts on. So, I'm even guilty of it too, but, we need to, the best way to ensure patient safety is that I am teaching you guys the right way to do things, because the treatments that we teach you, although can save a life, we have a potential to make things worse. Has anyone ever seen a bag valve mask? Okay, in my opinion, the bag valve mask is the most dangerous piece of equipment we have in the ambulance. If we're not using it correctly, we can make things a lot worse for a person. So we are gonna spend a lot of time, everybody getting hands-on practice, so that when you leave here, you can use that piece of equipment effectively and to make a good impact on patient outcome and not cause harm. So that's what we do. That's kind of the big thing that we're addressing here with patient safety, is knowing that we have good skills. We know the rules associated with what we do as first responders, and then we have the knowledge to deploy it. Research in EMS, the EMR level, we're not gonna ask you to get into research, but I read literature for fun. Everyone's heard of research, and when I talk about research, it's not that, well, you know, I read a couple posts on Facebook, or watched a couple YouTube videos, or watched MSNBC or whatever, right? That research is, I'm reading peer-reviewed literature on stuff. So when we wanna look at, you know, there's a new medication. And you gotta be careful, because research can be skewed into how, well, you said you're a scientist, right? Probability and statistics. Yeah, there's some things that if I wanna do a research on a topic, I can just kinda leave that data set out. I'm not lying to you, I'm just not giving you the full picture. And I'll give you an example, like if I was reading research on a new device that we can carry in the ambulance, but that research was through the methods conducted by the company that sells that device, how accurate is it? But research is also good, that we're looking at, trying to identify what is gonna create the best patient care outcome. So we look at studies where there, some blinded studies, and there's all different, and I don't need to get into the weeds on it, but, you know, there's even some EMS systems that, I think of the big, I can't remember the name of it, for seizures. They did it in Los Angeles County, 20,000 patients over a course of a year that they treated for seizures. And the paramedics had a blue syringe and a yellow syringe. And they were preloaded with numbers on, and some had normal saline, which is nothing, salt water. Some had Valium, some had Versed, different medications for stopping seizures. And the paramedic would give it, and they'd write a report, I gave 62448 syringe, seizing stopped, everything was good. And they studied that over a year. What they were able to come up with that study is that the best thing to do to stop seizures and to take the best patient outcome is 5 milligrams intramuscular Versed. Now I know but that was a huge landmark study that said, oh, okay, well, that's the best data off 20,000 patients. That's what we're gonna do. So research heavily steers where we're going. Here within the district, we're doing a quasi, I hate to use the word research, we're not ready yet, medical directors checking on a few things, but just as an example, we're gonna be trialing what's called nebulized ketamine. Yes, ketamine that, you know, some people use it wrongly, but ketamine is also very effective medication for treating severe pain. And if we nebulize it, that means we can just get someone masked and say, here, suck on this until the pain goes away. Should take less than a minute. But to put it in perspective, right now the best delivery medication for these, for pain controls, we have to start an IV, tubing, and then put the medicine in the vein for it to work. When you're a half mile back in a snowmobile chair with your femur sticking through the skin, how easy do you think it is to start an IV? And now it's a polar vortex, so how do you think that bag is gonna break? Now I'm putting ice cold slushy in someone's vein. So long story short, it's a lot easier where you're screaming, I can give you a mask, take 4 or 5 breaths out, take your pain to a controllable level, but yet it doesn't affect your breathing or heart rate or blood pressure. Now granted, that nebulized ketamine isn't within an EMR scope of practice, but that's something where we'll be collecting data. And we may be coming to you that is on scene first and say, hey, tell me about that patient when you first got there, what were they acting, what were they saying? Because all that's part of this data that all gets collected, and we've got one, we're doing this study with 7 other departments in the state. This hasn't been done in Wisconsin. So that's a form of research that we're doing to determine the efficacy or how well this treatment is going to work. And I think, I hope, and I pray that the people of the Northwoods are going to benefit from it. Okay, kind of killed you with the, yeah, it's just case study. And briefly, mobile integrated healthcare, you'll hear about this a little bit. Goes by a lot of names, mobile integrated healthcare, community EMS, community paramedic. This is where the EMS system is evolving to getting outside of that 911 care. So people think of EMS, they think call 911, ambulance shows up, take you to the hospital. That kind of branched into, you've got critical care or inter-facility transport, where person having a stroke at Howard Young Hospital, they need a coiling procedure that they can only do in Madison, but the weather's bad, they can't fly, so the transport team takes them to that specialty center. Tactical units, like embedding paramedics with the SWAT team. Starting to find new areas that EMS can benefit. One is community EMS, where we paramedics go out to a home and essentially do home health care. And not just paramedics, EMTs can do it. So you're seeing some buzz about that. And this is something that here in the district, we're very much working forward, and I hope to have a solid foot on the ground by December of 2026 of starting a program where our EMS staff is preemptively going into homes. Mrs. Smith get discharged from Howard Young with new onset heart failure. And she gets sent home, she's on a bunch of new medications that 3-4 days later, our staff can come in, make sure she's doing her meds right, do weight checks, vital sign assessments, even to lab analysis. So drawing blood, doing some blood work in the home for people. So that's kind of where the community EMS realm plays in. And public health, we saw this where EMS got rolled into this a lot during the COVID pandemic, where if it was within your scope of practice, you saw EMTs, paramedics, and vaccination clinics assisting with that. Any type of public health emergency, natural event, EMS gets rolled into that county health department to assist with whatever the needs are. So basically the EMS system is going to continue to evolve. What it's going to look like 20 years from now is much different than what it looks like today. All right. I said I'd go, I think I went more than that 15 minutes, but yeah, that's it for PowerPoint to death. I assure you that it will get more interesting as we jump into it. Yes,
Dispatch got back to me, they will receive text.
they will. So you just 911 text message.
That's what she said. I'm not gonna try it out. Just in case.
What time is it?
It is 8:20.
8:20. All right. All right.
I have a question. Do we have to give these books back at the end, or is this?
Those books
our
are
book?
yours. You can draw
Okay,
them.
so write our name and,
Write your name in them.
And what happens if you guys get a call while we're in class?
Well, they go. Now, if we get a muscle roll around here,
We're all.
I'm gonna hand out some gloves. For those that like to, I do have opportunities that people actually want to get in and do a ride along on ambulance or something like that, that we can make that happen. I can tell you, you can ride along here,
Like that.
but I can't guarantee you're gonna get a call. So right now, I've got some friends I made down at Net 5 in Minocqua, they'll take a ride along. Pretty good chance I can get some patient calls there. Yeah. Yeah, but if you guys are here and the situation's right, I mean,
No fluid.
Do you have just, your paperwork for them to sign up, like, about release statements, that's it, you know, that paperwork that here? So if they want to jump on it, they're not part of it.
oh, for ride along?
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, I
Yeah.
basically got, it's just a waiver that don't talk about what you see. And if you do, we're coming after you, you're civil. And if you get hurt, yeah, you know, but, we do everything to keep was saved as well. Right now, we're kind of slump, actually,
Yeah.
so, we average one call a day. So it's all a couple of days ago. No, those that got books, I've got more books that'll be here next week. So if you didn't get a book, you'll get your book, but please, the only thing, I don't know, some people came tonight, were kind of like, I'm just gonna feel it out, and weren't sure, so if you're not sure, please don't write up the books too much, because we'll reuse them. There's no penalty if you walk away. For me, I hope everybody stays, and I assure you, it will get more interesting as we go. I know tonight was kind of dry, but we gotta start somewhere. But otherwise, next class, next Wednesday, same time, same location. All right, and I will email everybody tomorrow with a couple of those links and the syllabus.
Oh, no, not Saturday, the next Wednesday?
What's it?
Not Saturday, the next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday we have class, so every Wednesday.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, all right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.